Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. We are back. Got some Q posts for you. You want them? Of course you do. Come get it if you think you can. 39:09, 2 minutes after the hour of 11. Q says, read in order. It's a great idea because you laid it out in order. So let's read it in order. The first one takes you to Breitbart. GOP, or as I like to call it, the GOP, that's what I always like to call it, gears up for the next relief fight. Democrats want the federal government to take over elections. Of course they do. The GOP is gearing up for what could be a contentious battle over the next stage of coronavirus relief. The Democrats continue to signal their desire to pursue a variety of changes related to the U.S. elections. Oh, interesting indeed. Republicans and Democrats are expected to begin the process of crafting the next stage of economic relief after successfully passing a bipartisan measure to provide relief to small businesses and individuals affected by the coronavirus pandemic last month. The measure ultimately passed unanimously in the Senate, but it initially did not go without opposition. Surprise, surprise, as House Speaker Nancy Pants Pelosi attempted to offer her own version of relief. So it was a relief remix filled with a variety of liberal wish list items. Yeah, so it was a Christmas wish relief remix, including major changes to voting methods. Okay, well, that's really the meat of the matter, right? They're talking about vote by mail. Vote by mail is essential. Vote by mail is essential to protecting the future of our democracy, that's actually a republic, as we confront this public health crisis. There is no legitimate argument against enacting it, Pelosi said last week. Vote by mail. Okay, so that's what this is really about. And it looks like Senator Amy Klobuchar is making herself useful, leading the Democratic effort, pushing a bill to provide vote by mail and expand early voting. I'd like to see how her hair fares in a blizzard. But let's see what else we got. The Phase 3 bill provided $400 million for election security grants. Grants are always a great way to to offer money to people who need them, which can be used broadly, including to expand vote-by-mail options and early voting, as well as to clean polling facilities and conduct public education campaigns. All right, so they want $400 million to clean the polling facilities and conduct some campaigns. The second link takes you to a Fox opinion piece from Harmeet Dillon. Democrats are attempting to use the devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic to take over elections again, and to do so permanently. I know, we just read that, Harmeet. We read it in order. Not content with attacking President Trump and his tireless science, economic, and policy advisors, or gleefully drawing attention to the roaring Trump economy, Democrats want to leverage this crisis to massively expand the power of Washington at the expense of the states and individual freedoms. Okay, so what are we doing here? What's the thing that they're trying to do? One of the many areas where Democrats want to expand Washington's power is over voting laws, undoing even the most basic protections for the integrity of our elections. After their efforts to include such radical provisions, as well as the Green New Deal, yeah, they tried to slip some of that in there, and other extreme expansions of federal power in the Phase 3 relief bill failed, they promised to try again with Phase 4. Well, you know what they say, if it doesn't work 3 times, then Phase 4. I don't know if that's a saying. While frustrating, it should not be surprising. Federal legislation is simply one front in the Democrats' ongoing war to change the rules by which we vote to make it easier for Democrats to win, since they have realized quite correctly that most Americans are not interested in Medicare for all, socialized everything, and sacrificing thousands of jobs on the altar of climate change. So what else are they doing, Harmeet? Wisconsin had an election scheduled for Tuesday for a variety of important races. The governor delayed it Monday morning, but that evening the Wisconsin Supreme Court determined he had exceeded his authority under state law. So now the election is going forward as scheduled for thousands of races. And let me hit you up with this last part right here. The Democrats asked the district court to allow absentee ballots postmarked by Election Day to be counted, even if received after, due to delays in processing a large number of absentee ballot requests and speculative delays in the mail. Instead of just granting the requested relief, the court went even further. Its order allowed absentee ballots received by next Monday, April 13th, to be counted regardless of when postmarked. Ah, there's the rub right there. And the third link, because we read it in order, unlike some people just wilding out on the internet, reading it in any old order, chaos, takes you to Donald Trump's Twitter. Republicans should fight very hard when it comes to statewide mail-in voting. Democrats are clamoring for it. Tremendous potential for voter fraud, and for whatever reason doesn't work out well for Republicans. Okay, well, voter fraud is the only way we know they're going to win, and they know it at this point too. But I feel the same way about this topic that I do about a lot of things. This is where we need to step in as citizens, and it seems like a very daunting task, but the fact of the matter is if we all just kind of kept an eye on our own neighborhoods, our own voting precincts, and kept pushing in little bits the way that we need to really keep on top of this, then that's the only way that this is really going to be protected. Because the fact of the matter is that we know it's coming. The cheating's coming. They're going to try and pull it off however they can. So whether we have to pull out our cameras and keep people honest or follow precinct polling stations around, I don't really know what the exact answer is. But the fact is that we need to do this together. The president needs our help. And if you're sitting back waiting for Q and President Trump to fix everything, enjoying the show, hoping mass arrests, which Q actually never really mentioned, are going to happen, then you've kind of missed the point of this whole movement to begin with. This was all about lighting a spark for us to do something, for us to protect our republic. Why did WHO, being the World Health Organization, make several strong recommendations not to impose a travel ban? Actually, it's make several strong recommendation. There's an S missing there. Not to impose a travel ban. Well, I think that if you really think logically, it seems pretty clear. It seems like they wanted people to get in. And why? Because maybe that little virus might get around a little bit, right? Work its way around. Next thing you know, everybody's got the Rona. And once everybody's got the Rona, then they can hit you up with that vaccine that they just so happen to have stashed away already just for the special occasion. And of course, if you die, you know what happens when you die. And if you don't know what happens when you die, I'm going to enlighten you. You become a Democrat. That's right. Dead people in our country become Democrat voters because Democrats steal dead people's votes. Yeah, I said it. Why did select Democrat governments ban the use of hydrochloroquine? Key, and then we have key in brackets. So it seems like this is the key to opening maybe some other doors. Why does fake news push anti-hydroxychloroquine fear tactics regarding use? Yes, we had the fish tank cleaner story going around last week. Seems like they were really wanting to push this. And of course, the World Health Organization is saying that this is just simply anecdotal, this hydroxychloroquine, except it's been administered to people since 1955. Millions of people have taken this. So this isn't new at all. And you can go to the World Health Organization's own website and you can see that they've actually endorsed this for other uses. So for them to just act so glib about this is absolutely telling. Why was impeachment pushed through House fast? Did they count on ours blocking new witnesses, ours being Republicans? Well, I'm not so sure that they really wanted to do anything other than to tie it up. If they actually got an impeachment, I think that would have been great. But if they weren't able to actually get past Republicans, which they knew they weren't going to be able to do, they knew that this was going to get wrapped up, and that was time sensitive. Why? When did Biden become the front runner? Well, that was Super Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say Super Tuesday. Why was this critically important? What happens directly after? Who benefits the most? Everything at stake. Well, if you want my guess, I'm going to imagine that Biden, being of not very sound mind right now, becomes the front runner so that there's a placeholder right there. You've got this guy who is going to be holding all these votes. And of course, you got Bernie Sanders over there who's pretty much willing to cough it up because we all know he's about the coin. So Biden's our guy, right? Now, we don't really have a solid candidate for vice president just yet, but we've got a couple placeholders. So when this all starts to go down and we focus on the race again, maybe if Biden all of a sudden goes down with some sort of mental issue, that place is going to have to be left open. Who steps in? One name does come to mind. One Hillary Rodham Clinton might be interested. She's probably tired of signing books at Costco about crusty women. I meant to say gutsy woman. Gutsy women. She's a gutsy woman. She will gut you. That's the rumor. Who benefits the most? Everything at stake. When everything else failed, do you attempt to cheat? Yes. Yes. This is about so much more than politics at this point. And so they're willing to throw the Rona at us. They're willing to throw the Rona at the entire world, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People's Republic of China Party. The silent war continues. So that's the DPRCCP. DPRCCP. The silent war continues. So we see the D in brackets, and we also see this 6+ in brackets. In reference to the 6+, I can offer up a couple ideas here. This is 3654 from the 7th of December 2019, and I simply want to point out that this was a very, very rough weekend for some, and some were in a panic. And we had a few different events. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They were labeled D1 through D6, and they were all sadly violent events. And violent events can be real events, but sometimes the intentions are false. And so we call these events foxtrots. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look at the screen because I can't say it. Foxtrot. So moving forward, that's what we're going to call it. So is that what this is referring to? Well, I certainly hope not. But let me rememberize you. I just pointed out that the word recommendation was missing an S on post 3909. It was supposed to be strong recommendations. Well, misspellings matter. That's an S. S stands for Soros, and plus also stands for Soros. So could we have 6 events that are being funded by George Soros coming down the pike? Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be foxtrots, but he could very well be involved. And this would make sense. We're going to talk about that in a future post here, but it would seem to make sense. As a matter of fact, his Brennan Center for Justice is pushing strongly for Dropbox voting. So it's immediately relevant to this post, and I think it could be possible. For now, let's move on to 3910, 16 minutes after the hour of 11. And it takes you to a long article to the National Review, and it's super long. Ain't nobody got time for that right now, but don't worry about it. Q says, I know it's long. That's why I broke it down. John is a dedicated prosecutor who sees things in absolute terms, says H. James Pickerstein, which is a kind of a cool name, a former chief assistant U.S. attorney who hired Durham in the Connecticut office in the 1980s. Pickerstein said Durham relied on a good versus evil vision of the world while overseeing the probe of former Governor John G. Rowland. Okay, so Durham has largely flown under the radar, hasn't he? And that's probably a good thing, or at least in my opinion, it seems like it would be. It suggests that what he's doing isn't being leaked and it isn't being talked about. But that doesn't mean that it's not being understood in Washington. Much of this is the silent war, remember? Much of what we don't see. And it looks like Q's wanting to highlight good versus evil, stressing that this is much more than just politics at play. There is a second link to the BBC, and I'm afraid I can't access it. Not because I'm behind a paywall, but because I haven't been able to access their website for the last 8 months. It seems the BBC doesn't want to hear from the MAC. K. I spelled my name with a K. But it's an older article talking about how Durham is trusted in Washington from both sides of the aisle. And that, of course, includes Democrats. And that might be very important if he starts dropping hammers on them, right? I want to thank Lisa Mae Crowley for putting up a couple of screenings that I did want to show you, as well as including this quote right here. Mukasey said Durham reminded him of the title of Franklin Roosevelt advisor Louis Brownlow's autobiography, A Passion for Anonymity. Anonymity. It's when people don't know who you are. I want to take you back to post 3800. Thanks, Lisa Mae. And this was where Q was talking about Durham. And you see Washington, crossing the river there in his Durham boat. Anons found the subtle hint dropped in the beginning. Think Durham start. Think Q start. You have more than you know. Q. Well, Durham started on October 28th, 2017. I know, and that was the same time that Q started posting. I wonder if it's relevant. No, I'm just kidding. It is. Post 3911, 36 minutes after the hour of 11. Have you ever witnessed the media, Hollywood Democrat Party, full in brackets? And I'm going to assume these F's to mean a couple of things. Foreign leaders, foreign media, etc. push so much hatred towards a sitting U.S. president. No, never in my life. And we just recently saw Chinese state media allowed into the presidential briefing room when OAN gets themselves kicked out. Why are division tactics necessary? Because we're starting to figure it out. And if you don't believe that to be true, I think just go ahead and look around in your own circle of friends. I know for myself, I've seen a lot of people, especially over the last couple of weeks, that would not have agreed with much of what I'm saying are starting to now message me asking what I've been talking about all along. And the reason is that we're not really talking about politics anymore, are we? We were talking about a global pandemic. So everybody wants to be safe from things like that. And we see that no country on the planet is left untouched with this. And what it really does is it starts to expose the World Health Organization's faulty game. It's just another one of these globalist organizations that takes billions of our dollars when we could be using this for actual healthcare, coordinated, defined propaganda, infiltration instead of invasion. They will stop at nothing to regain power. Precisely. They know that the only way to really create this is from the inside. We see that with our government. We see that with our law enforcement organizations, or really anywhere you want to go with this. Even the QAnon movement, right? They will stop at nothing to regain power. Post 3912, 36 minutes after the hour 11, Q says read and discern for yourself. So do that. Post 3913, 49 minutes after the hour of 11, we get a Twitter status, and Q asks, what is the primary benefit to keep public in mass hysteria regarding COVID-19? Well, they all stay at home. And when you stay at home, you start to get a little stir crazy. Next thing you know, you're making some poor decisions. And after a certain point, we're going to have to vote, right? So some people will be like, all right, well, fine, I'll just mail it in. I'll just do it online. Next thing you know, hi, my name's Pete Buttigieg. Have you tried my shadow app? Think voting. Are you awake yet? Well, this seems to be the case. We were just talking about this. It looks like a lot of Democrats are wanting to push this and push it immediately. They're not really focused on coronavirus, right? I do want to interject that it does appear that there is more at play here, and I don't know the extent of it. So hear what I'm saying before you comment. But the rollout of 5G does appear to be real, at least in some neighborhoods. And we've seen military movement. We've seen odd movement in our skies. What it all means, I don't really know. So before you come at me in the comment section saying, Patrick, I just think you're trying to spread fear porn about 5G. You don't know anything about it. I'm just adding that it's happening. And I think that that's relevant. Now, here's the link. Chris Berg, POV Now. Shocking! Minnesota Senator and Dr. Scott Jensen said that he received a 7-page document from Minnesota Health to fill out death certificates with a diagnosis of COVID-19, whether the person actually died from COVID-19 or not. Why is MN, being Minnesota, inflating COVID-19 death numbers? You're going to want to check this out.
I think is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son, who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after, and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning, and it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people, and I worry about that. I worry that sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor.
Post 39:14, 54 minutes after the hour of 2, we get this Bible phrase that we've seen before, the armor of God, Ephesians 6:10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. It's entitled Armor of God. Q says the world will soon understand. Well, I imagine if organizations like the World Health Organization get exposed and we really start to see what this coronavirus is all about, the impeachment scheme, the whole entire deal, people are going to start to realize, hey man, you just took me away from my job. You just scared me and my family. You just worried me 24/7 about all these numbers about people dying. That anger is going to turn into some real resolve. It'll show at the polls, but it's going to show up in our culture. And that's something that we can't really predict at this point, but we do realize that this is truly, truly evil, and true evil really needs to be combated. The world will soon understand. Let's move on. Post 39:15, 28 minutes after the hour of 3, we get a Twitter status to M2 Madness, who says, what are the odds? And then leaves us a couple links right here. The first one is from Axios, and it's giving us a coronavirus timeline, in particular, January 15th. The patient who becomes the first confirmed U.S. case leaves Wuhan and arrives in the U.S. carrying the coronavirus. Ooh, and the one on the right is from ABC Fake News, pointing out that the articles of impeachment delivered to Senate triggering historic trials for President Trump, same date. What about odds? What about odds, John?
Up and down.
Methods. My numbers guy says it's up and down. Why was it fast-tracked in the House? Why did Pelosi hold until January 15th? Well, it looks like Q's giving us the answer. What was the release marker? So it looks like that release was a marker. It was scheduled. Public. Time to negotiate Senate witness process. What if impeachment was meant to fail? What if impeachment was meant to distract from overseas developments? Well, that's looking more and more the case. What did all U.S. media focus on during impeachment process? They focused on anything that had to do with Trump, Ukraine, or Russia. How do you term POTUS rallies? How do you term POTUS economic gains? How do you term POTUS unemployment gains? How do you term POTUS China trade negotiations? How do you term Biden debates? How do you term Biden public appearances? How do you term Biden live interviews? How do you term Hunter Biden Ukraine China MSM coverage? Well, wait a minute. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 terms there. I wonder what that means. It looks like Biden was their boy. How do you change the narrative? Who benefits the most? And I'm guessing they're talking about the World Health Organization. So while all this goes down and they're investigating into POTUS, this does take a lot of attention away from Biden while he can hopefully gain some political steam. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is sneaking in the Rona. How do you alter POTUS Biden presidential debate structure? How do you hold hostage public aid in exchange for national ballot harvesting law adoption? And you know what? That's a big one. And if people really understand what that means, they're going to be very angry. How do you appease radical left knowing Sanders' dropout coming, which is exactly what went down? Hold hostage public aid in exchange for Green New Deal. The truth will shock the world. Regain power by any means necessary. I just want to point out that Q mentions shock and power. I wonder if it's relevant. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Let's move on. Post 39:16, 6 minutes after the hour of 4. We get this right here. It's a little meme called The Plan. It's a quote from Henry, find a butt to Kissinger. Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there were an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being, granted to them by their world government. And that is from Mr. Kissinger in an address to the Assemble Your Own Burger meeting at Evian, France in 1992. Yeah, that creep right there. Q says the silent war continues. That's been the plan all along, and I think people are really waking up to this. I know it's hard to believe, but I do truly believe this to be true. A lot of people are starting to understand, wait a minute, this medicine works, and why are they trying to get us to do the vaccine? And wait, why are we staying at home again? Why is my paycheck dwindling? Why am I not at work? They get it, and you do too. Let's move on. Post 3917. Oh, no. 37 minutes after the hour of 4. Q says, out of order, insert important. And we get a Twitter status. Q says, did you think spirit cooking was just pretend? So this next stuff right here is a bit graphic. The first one is a Twitter status to saved Angel 61. Again, text Trump to 88022. It's a long name. At Menage Salvi. And as you can see, there's some pretty creepy pictures right there. So we're going to skip off that. I think you know what's being talked about here. The next link takes you to this. And this has been around actually for quite some time. It is a webpage called the Cannibal Club, specializing in the preparation of human meat. Cannibal Club brings the cutting edge of experimental cuisine to the refined palates of LA's cultural elite. All right, well, you can read the rest if you like. It's linked on Qmap. This is obviously some very creepy stuff, but stuff that does need to be talked about. In regard to this website, I seem to remember way back in the day seeing flyers. I think it was before these websites would have been up, but this website's actually been up for quite some time. This has been a rumor in LA for quite some time. I have honestly no idea if it really is real. I do know that the subject is real. Whether or not this website is a real thing, it's really hard to say. But it's been rumored for a long time. I do want to point that out. Even before this website was up, this Cannibal Club was a rumor. So there must be some sort of teeth to the story. That's all I will say about that. However, I will be spending a lot of time talking about this very topic in my series, The Bite. You've probably already seen part 1. And I mentioned in part 1 that I was working on part 2. So if you're asking, hey, Patrick, where you been all this time? It's because I'm working on part 2. The Bite, like I said. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that stuff. Actually, we're going to talk a lot about that stuff. It's probably going to be more than a 2-part series. That's what I've been working on, and that's what I'm going to continue to do because I'd really like to tell it rather than just kind of dumbing the topic down to fit the Q post. But this is a very, very important topic that Q is bringing up, and it is something that is very real, and I would like to be able to present it in a manner and platform that you'll be able to actually see just how real it is. So on that, I'm going to leave you. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that. We will celebrate with cake next time because we just reached 180 subscribers and I think we reached 85,000 on Twitter. So thanks to all of you. My alternate links are down below, so please check those out. My email is down below if you would like to share some information with me. Please don't DM me on Twitter. I take all that information through the email, and my Patreon is linked down below if you'd like to support the channel. All of that is down below if you're watching on YouTube. That's all I got for you for now. Until next time, stay funky.